Curator Podcast. My name is Naomi, and I'm the host of this channel where I like to talk about knitting and the fiber arts. Today's going to be kind of a different, special, short episode. I thought I would walk you guys through what I want to make for my Make 9 for 2020. So for those of you who aren't familiar in the crafting kind of making world, Make 9 is a personal challenge you set for yourself where you identify 9 different projects you want to try and make throughout the year. So as it is a new year, I thought I would sit down and chat with you guys about 9 projects that I've either had my eye on for a while now or that I've recently discovered and would like to make in 2020. Before we jump into that, just if you guys would like to follow me on social media, I am the Yarn Curator on Instagram. And then if you'd like to check out my projects or be friends on Ravelry, I am House of Cardigans. So feel free to check those out if you are interested. And yeah, we'll jump right in. So to prep for my Make 9, what I did was I went ahead and took a scroll through my queue on Ravelry, which is fairly up to date. Last spring, I was lucky enough to travel to the Edinburgh Yarn Festival, and prior to that festival, I cleaned up my Ravelry account, so I put all my stash in. I sold a lot of stash that I wasn't feeling anymore, and then one of the other things I did was line up projects in my queue that I wanted to make. Before that, it was a really disorganized system. I would favorite things I wanted to make. I would add them to my library, even though I didn't own the pattern, just as a placeholder. I would add things to the queue. And so what I did was I deleted a bunch of patterns that either just aren't my aesthetic anymore or I just know I'm not going to make. And then I started to really identify patterns that caught my attention or that I knew I wanted to shop for. So since then, I have tried to remain good in practice in terms of keeping my stash up to date on Ravelry as well as my queue. So to start out for my Make 9, I went ahead and just did a quick scroll through there. I either took out things that I've already made in the last year or that I'm just not feeling anymore. And so yeah, we'll get started. So one of the first things on my list that I want to make, and I've been talking about probably as long as this channel has been in existence, is the Dust of Snow wrap by Helen Stewart. This is a shawl that's designed to use an advent calendar. And so for me, I will be using my advent calendar from this year, which is from Felicity Yarn Studio. It's a crystals and gemstones theme. You can choose to hold it with a strand of mohair throughout, which I think I might do. It's just going to require getting some mohair. And yeah, I think the colors in the calendar will lend themselves well to this wrap. So that is project number 1 on the horizon. The next project that I'm thinking about doing is the Angel Face Turban by Poison Girl Knits. It's a pattern that I've seen other people make, and it routinely pops up, and every time I see it, I absolutely love this pattern. It's knit out of fingering weight yarn. It's knit, I believe, back and forth, and then at a point you join in the round. I actually started this last spring. It was supposed to be my travel knitting while we were in Scotland, but at some point I made a mistake and it has been hibernating ever since. So I robbed the needle tips for another project. So as you can see, here is what I had prior. I am going to either see if I can rip back and salvage this, or I'll just frog it and start over. It's not that much knitting that has been lost in the long run. And this yarn is Hedgehog Fibers in the Monarch colorway. And I think I've been really into peach, and I love to wear headbands and head wraps. So I think this will pop really nicely against my brown hair. And yeah, I absolutely love this yarn. For the third project I am thinking about making, it is the Ambient Sweater by Eri, E-R-I. So this is a sweater that I have been looking at for over a year now at making, and I've never quite figured out the right yarn that I want to use for it. You can either do it in a 2-color or a 1-color version. The 2-color, you do a contrasting yoke and then the body in a different color, or you can do it all in 1 color. I believe in the 2-color version, it's written where you hold a strand of mohair in the yoke. And I think one of the reasons I've been hesitant or scared to try this pattern is because it's by a Japanese designer, and that's no fault of them. I'm not saying that as a negative thing. I just know patterns from Japan are written differently, and they don't always include as many steps or directions as some US patterns. This is a conversation my sister Zoe and my sister Zoe has the Felicity Yarn Studio podcast. We've had this conversation where it seems that a lot of US designers kind of spoon feed you a lot of pattern information, and in our experience doing some kind of more Norwegian designs or Nordic, they don't give you as much direction or detail, and it's really up to you and your knowledge as a knitter to figure some things out. And I feel like Japanese patterns are kind of the same way. So that's kind of intimidated me and my own lack of familiarity with that style of pattern writing, I guess is the best way to phrase it. So, but that being said, it's a new year. It's good to challenge yourself. I'm going to wait for the sirens to go by. So with that being said, it's a new year. It's always good to challenge yourself and learn new skills. And why shouldn't reading a pattern be a new skill to learn or to improve upon? So for yarn, I have a few things picked out, and they're kind of interchangeable between some of the other projects I have picked out in my Make 9. So they may or may not be used for this project or another one, just full disclaimer. So the first yarn I am considering using for this is some La Bien Aimée that I have in my stash. It is their La Grande Nuage colorway. It's a really pretty kind of concrete gray with aqua, black, purple, pink speckles. And I have 3 skeins of this, which should be enough to do a 3/4 length sleeve jumper, in which I'm fine with. I prefer my sweater's sleeve length at that length. So the other idea I have for this sweater is actually to do it as a fade, because I think with the textural detail at the top of the yoke, it will lend itself well to the fade effect. So one fade I have kind of picked out and sitting in my stash is these 4 skeins. So the top is from Ushatita. It was one of their 2019 EYF limited edition colorways, and I believe it's the Kaylee colorway. And then the second from the top is Long Dog Yarns. It's in the Parisian Mist colorway. Next I have Spun Right Round, and the colorway on that one I believe is called Lost Souls. Yes. And then at the bottom is another EYF yarn from Cosmic Strings, and this is also their 2019 EYF exclusive colorway. So it would be kind of cool to create a project that starts and ends with EYF colors. And I think they would fade nicely with one another. I think I could get away with maybe eliminating one of these 2 lighter skeins because they're fairly similar if I wanted to try and save one. But that's one option for this pattern. And I don't think I'll do it in this, but another option for a fade is kind of a light purple. So I would start the yoke out of this Moon Tower Dye Works, then into Long Dog yarn, and end it with some Dye Happy. But I think this is a little too bright. I don't think I would actually wear a sweater out of these colors. It's a little too bright for me. I tend to wear like more muted pastels or richer, deeper jewel tones, and this kind of throws me off. I like this color and I think it's great in an accessory, but for a garment it might be a little too much for my personal aesthetic and comfort zone. So that is one option. All right, so for project number 4, I have been obsessed with the Magnolia Sweater by Camilla Vad since it came out. It's one of the ones that I wanted to shop for in Scotland, and then I had my eye out for something at SAF, and nothing has really spoke to me yet, except I think the Biches and Bichou that I picked up at Hill Country Weavers this last November will be perfect for this project. So this is another fingering weight sweater. I believe it's worked from the bottom up with a lace motif, and I absolutely love it. I've been really into projects that include texture lately, and you'll see that as I go through everything. It's a lot of textural knits in terms of the stitches and how they create the motifs. So for this one, as I said, I think I will be using my Biches et Bouches in the turquoise colorway for the Magnolia Sweater. I think this will show off all that detail down at the waist beautifully. And I believe there's a version of this that's written where you hold mohair with it, but this has enough texture to it already that I think it'll show it off perfectly on its own. So I'm really excited for this one. I might cast it on sooner rather than later. So my 5th project is kind of just a fun one, and it is the Yoke O Clock pattern, and apparently I did not write down the notes for that or the designer's name on my notes, so I apologize to the designer. So I first saw this project on the Knit Girls podcast and kind of fell in love with it since then. So I'm just going to show you guys a shot of my leftover partial skeins, which I will use for this project. All right, y'all, so here is my Box O partial skeins, and I am thinking for this one of either using this leftover woolen boon. I love the sample itself with mauve, but I don't think I have enough of this, but I could probably make a fade out from the center if I run out of yarn. Another option is I do have a good amount of this La Bien-Aimée left over from my Elton. I think that would be stunning in the clock with a dark contrast color, which I'll probably just pull a mini or two. I have a couple black minis, and I think those will be lovely together. Here's another option. This is Felicity Yarn Studio. So yeah, another option. This is Knox Yarn Co. I have options. I think it'll be great for using up some of this partial yarn that is currently accumulating and waiting to become part of my Northeasterly or Cozy Memories blankets, but I pick those up and kind of work on them for a week and then forget about them for a year. So it's a new year. Maybe they'll get some attention soon. The 6th project on my list is if anyone who's been paying attention to anything in the knitting world will be familiar with, it is the No Frills Sweater by Petite Knits. This pattern is knit using a fingering weight yarn held with a strand of mohair. It has been wildly popular for the last year or so, and it's just a beautiful basic raglan sweater. I know it's not the greatest in terms of size inclusivity. However, since it is a simple basic raglan sweater, you can kind of go find others for free even on Ravelry and just apply the same concept. I think the neckline might be a little different. I saw one while I was browsing last night on Ravelry, and if I can find it again, I'll pop it here on the screen. That is very similar to No Frills, and it's the same concept, fingering held with a mohair. And yeah, I just want kind of a basic staple for my wardrobe. So one of the ideas I have for this sweater is to use the La Bien-Aimée that I showed earlier and hold that with this kind of dark blue, it's a little bit blue-green that I have in my stash by Lang. However, and I'll hold that up for you guys. So one idea I have is to hold this Lang with this La Bien-Aimée together, because I think this blue goes really well with the speckle in there, and I think it'll make a really interesting marl effect with the gray. However, it kind of feels like sacrilege to hold anything to cover up this yarn, so maybe not. But yeah, it feels a little naughty to cover up the speckling of La Bien-Aimée with mohair. Also with this project, I kind of like the idea of it being in a solid color and not held with a speckle. I do have another kind of yellow speckle yarn in my stash that has like hot pink and aqua speckles, and it's meant to look like funfetti birthday cake. That color itself, the yellow of the base, is kind of like a baby yellow. So originally I bought this Angora while we were overseas to hold double with that yarn to kind of tone down that yellow to more of a buttery color. And I still might do that. I just might hold it with some plain white mohair and save this for a more special project. That's one option for that. Or I think a white no frills would look super elegant. However, I am not a super elegant person. I have like a 100% success ratio of dribbling coffee from my mouth onto the boob area every morning, either driving to work or at work. So a white sweater is not really practical for me. Also part of the reason why I wear primarily black. It hides a lot of mistakes. All right, so that was a long tangent on the no frills. So my 7th project I have picked out is also by Petite Knits. It is called the Sunday Sweater, the mohair edition. I love this sweater. She also has a cardigan version of this. It features a really interesting textural effect around the yoke that's kind of like a sunburst fan effect. I absolutely love it. This pattern is made holding 3 single skeins of mohair together. If you watched my last podcast episode, you'll know that I'm kind of in a little bit of a self-imposed no spend through 2020. I'm really hoping to save my money to be able to do some travel in the next year or so, both domestic and international. And so the less I spend on yarn, the more money I have to save for those trips. However, the Angora and then this Lang is the only mohair that I own in my stash. And so for this project, I think I'm going to shop for mohair for it as well as for the no frills if I can't decide, because it's not going to be that much in the long run that I need. And there's some affordable mohairs on the market. One mohair I've been really curious to try, and I kind of kick myself for not buying any a few times now that I've had the chance to at some of the yarn shops I've visited while traveling last year. It's Ito Yarns on their Sensei base. It might be Sensei. It's a silk mohair. They have some gorgeous colors out of it. It's pretty affordable in the long run, but it is only, I believe, 25 gram skeins that they sell, and so it kind of adds up for that reason. But I think I'm going to go ahead and buy some. So the 8th sweater on my list is the Tresckow by Anna Dervaux. It's a gorgeous free pattern on Ravelry. It is also a fingering weight held with mohair, and it looks like a basic raglan with a beautiful lace motif along the raglan increases. It's just charming and simple, and yeah, I'm really attracted to it. So for this pattern, one idea that I had was to knit it out of another sweaters quantity that I have of Ushatita in the Seascape colorway. I think the colors on this are so nice and soft and delicate. This yarn I picked up on D-Stash on Ravelry. It was my birthday present to myself 3 years ago. And I've been saving it for just the right project. And I think maybe this one, although I do like it in the kind of plain tonal yarns. I don't know, lately I've been drawn to projects that aren't in speckled or variegated. I've really been enjoying tonal bases, so maybe that's just my taste changing a little bit, but I think it would be beautiful in this, maybe held with a soft blue mohair. I think would be really pretty. And finally, last but not least, I just found this pattern last night while I was browsing Ravelry. I wanted to try and mix in a few things on my Make 9 that are not by kind of the predominant well-known designers. Although I do think this person is a well-known designer, they're just not like the Caitlin Hunters or the Dre Renees or Stephen Wests of the knitting world right now. So the 9th pattern on my list is the Kirigami sweater by Gudrun Johnston. It is another pattern that has a really interesting textural yoke. It reminds me of the most recent, one of the recent patterns that came out of Line magazine using John Arbin. It also had a similar textural effect in the yoke, but it also had stranded color work. I think that might have been the Wrist Tees sweater. I could be wrong. But anyways, Kirigami by Gudrun Johnston. I really like this pattern. It's knit out of a DK weight yarn, and I really like that textural effect at the top. I think it'll be super flattering. So for this pattern, I think I am going to use this DK weight knit by numbers, or actually it's their Viola base from John Arbin. It's a really soft gray blue, 100% merino wool, and it looks like it is dyed in the fleece. But it's this absolutely beautiful like gray blue sweater, and I think that'll be a really nice staple piece to add into my wardrobe. I have, I believe, 5 or 6 skeins of this, which should be enough yarn. And then, yeah, I had originally bought this to make the Nira sweater by Fiber Tales, and I still think I'm going to use the same base. They just have a different color that I want that sweater in instead. So when I have the money and I'm no longer in a vow of no spending, vow of poverty, when I have no longer sworn not to buy yarn, I will purchase that, as well as a few other things. So that is it for my Make 9, you guys. If you'd like to leave a comment down below with some things you're thinking about making in the new year, I would love to check those patterns out. Maybe add them to my queue if they strike my fancy. But yeah, if you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to leave a comment down below. Hit that thumbs up button, and if you really like my channel, consider hitting the subscribe button as well. Just helps promote my channel out there into the world a little bit more. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I look forward to potentially, hopefully, sharing these projects with you guys throughout the year. I hope you have a great afternoon. Enjoy your knitting, your making, and whatever brings you joy. Talk to you later. Bye!